How's it going, guys? So in this video, I want to do kind of a film photography digitizing workflow. In particular, we're gonna digitize a newly developed roll of film, 35mm, on a Plustek 8300i AI. Okay, so if you're asking if there's any difference between 8300i and the AI version, the only difference is the AI version comes with SilverFast 9, like software for image editing. It is quite optimized for film photography. So that additional cost you're spending for that AI version is just a software upgrade. With that AI version of the upgrade, you also get a slide for color correction when you scan that slide in the Plustek 8300i. Okay, so just to show you guys really quick, really there isn't anything fancy on the scanner. It's pretty rudimentary design according to today's standards. It's a non-automated film scanning machine, all right? With this, if you purchase it out of the box, you're gonna get two adapters. One is for slides, and this one is also used to load the slides that they provide for SilverFast color correction. And the other one is just your regular film strip for negatives. Okay, so the film strip have about 6 exposures on here. So if you have a normal workflow, or if your film lab is kind of developing the film and cutting it in a strip of 5, you're gonna run into workflow issues because that's really not optimized for the 6 strip film load. So you're gonna be loading more and you're gonna spend more time scanning. So it is probably better when you go out and have films developed, just have them develop the roll and go home and cut it yourself. There are probably plenty of film cutters that are out there on Amazon. I'll post the link down below where you can get a few, cut them yourselves, and it's gonna probably work better with this workflow, all right? All right, so now we have the camera over here. What I really want to show you is that those films are very static electric sensitive. So they pick up quite a lot of dust. So to minimize the amount of dust, it is recommended you have some sort of the air blower, and also use a pair of lint-free gloves. And I have a pair over here, which is going to help with loading the film into the actual scanner. Okay, so again, the scanner itself is really, really simple. Those buttons are not even gonna work when I'm using it for SilverFast, but if you're using OpticFilm's own scanner software, those buttons work, but they're not important. The most important button is here is a power button. You press it. Of course, I need to connect the power. So once you press the power button, turns green. The scanner is pretty much ready to go, and there is really no warming up. I believe it's using a LED light source, so it's not like the tungsten light source where the light needs to take some time to warm up to in order to get most accurate scan. But for this one, it's not. So we can probably use it right away, and this is the film 6 film slider. Okay, so all I'm going to do, get my film out, find which side is the correct side to face up. Usually you look down, and if the letter and the ISO speed is correct, then this is the correct side to scan. Okay, so to put on top. And I'm going to kind of just gently lay it on here and close the slide. Now, when you close it, don't close it fully, and then you can slightly adjust the spacing just a little bit to ensure that each frame, I'm already getting cat hair. Of course, I have lots of cats, but look at that. So the framing is kind of done. And now all you have to do, okay, it's not directional. All you have to do is slide it in here. And again, it's not automatic. So each of those sliding action is manual. Now we're just gonna open up the SilverFast scanning software. Okay, it's SilverFast version 9. To start with, I'm not a big fan of the SilverFast 9 because even though they call it AI, a lot of dust removal algorithms and adjustment capabilities are rather antiquated and old and outdated. There really hasn't been much update to image generation, to smart, dust and scratch removal functionality. So most of the times, I just use this to extract as much detail out of those films as possible. For example, I'll be adjusting the midtones to just ensure that this scan is more flat. So later on, when I bring this to Photoshop and Lightroom for editing, I would have all the details to start with. All right, so this is basically what I'm doing with the SilverFast, and you are free to explore. If you have the same scanner, there is a dust removal functionality over here. It's called ISRD. They use an infrared layer to do a second scan, and then they remove the dust depending on the readout from the infrared layer. If there's a dust, it's going to show up as black spots. They mask it, and then they apply that to the actual scan to remove those spots. It works, I would say, 70 to 80% of the time. And for scratches, they don't work as well because, again, as I said, scratch and hairs, the algorithm from SilverFast is just not good enough. Over here, I actually already scanned this image. Okay, so and I saved it, and I'm just going to show you what the pre-scan looks like and some of the basic functionality that you need to at least extract most of the detail and have a correct setting so you can bring this image out for post-processing. Now, I already advanced the frame on the scanner. So right now I'm going to pre-scan a new slide. So I'm going to hit pre-scan again. Pre-scan takes about less than 10 seconds, and you can see the pre-scan process here, and you can see the preview over here. Okay, so it did its job, and for what I can see, it did apply the auto processing algorithm over here. But obviously, this is actually, to start off with, this is a little bit too saturated for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is probably just tone down the saturation a little bit. Okay. And in terms of contrast, you can always adjust the slide, get the contrast that you like, and also keep a little bit on the flat side for post-editing. Okay, so over here, I think I'm already getting most of the detail that I want from this image. There are some really fine details over here. It's kind of extracted, so I'm kind of already pretty happy about it. And again, I'm going to adjust the frame to get most out of this image. The first thing I need to do is actually set the correct name. And I think based on my scan over here, my last scan was 07. I am going to do, this is frame 08. So I'm going to set the name as 08. I always output it as TIFF. You could output it as PSD. Those are compressionless. So again, good to start with for post-editing. For the preset, this is not as important, but what's important is actually the actual scanning resolution. Now, 3600 is actually, I believe, the native scanning resolution for this scanner. So I'm going to set it as 3600. You are more than welcome to use 7200. However, I believe it is upscaled from 3600. And the results you're getting is pretty much using the antiquated upscaling algorithm from the SilverFast. I highly suggest start with 3600 ppi, which is going to give you a 52 meg TIFF to start with. If you need to upscale, do that upscaling in Photoshop. It's going to give you a much better results for the upscaling compared to using SilverFast. My honest opinion. Okay. So with that said, the preview is done, the framing is done, and you get kind of, the contrast and the detail extraction to your liking. You could also fine tune over here with some of the other sliders there is. However, most of the functionality you're going to extract, they are going to do the same thing more or less. Another important thing that I would always do is global color correction, which is over here, that is enabled. So global color correction gives you a very quick white balance adjustment with just clicking of that little dot and giving you a fairly accurate white balance to start with. This looks pretty natural, okay? So I'm going to start with that. And another thing that's important is negative fix functionality over here. It's a really, really bad name, okay? I wouldn't call it, I would just say negative fix. Okay, so within the negative fix, they give you a few vendors that they kind of color correct it and give you a good starting point. Now, I pretty much just try out different fix effects, and what I find works best for all the color negative that I have is Kodak Actor. This gives me a pretty natural color balance, daylight color balance to start with. You could play with the exposure that it's going to give you, to start with, and it gives you a tolerance, which is pretty much how much of that effect is applied for the overall color correction. And once you have that good value, set it there, forget about it, and hit scan. Okay, so once you hit scan, it's going to save with the exact same file name. And you can see the progress is initializing. And it's going to scan. Now, I am pretty happy with the actual scanning speed with the 3600 ppi. It's less than 20 seconds. You can see the progress over here. And once it is done, it's going to create that file over here. And we should see it momentarily right here. I could open up the Photoshop and just really quickly preview, okay, what is being done. And again, as I said, you will always want to do the dust removal over here because Photoshop's healing brush is so much more powerful and efficient as opposed to the SilverFast healing. Like literally over here, it's a very, very quick workflow if you have Photoshop, even if you have Lightroom, color balancing, all other kind of adjustments to extract the detail. It's just done so much more efficiently over here, okay? Even those kind of dust, you apply the healing over here, okay? It's going to give you a much better situation context awareness with film grain in consideration when you do those kind of adjustments, okay? All right, so if you do this, nobody's gonna notice that you did some fix over here for the negative and the dust, and you zoom out, boom, it's done. So this is kind of my quick overall workflow for just the one image adjustment. We can do another one, so I'm gonna save it over here as a TIFF, and it's gonna save rather fast. We can advance my film slider in the scanner to the next frame, and I'm gonna go back to SilverFast, do my next scan of a pre-scan, and we're gonna quickly do that from start to finish so you know kind of how much time you are going to take for this kind of workflow. All right, so this is actually a water reflection of the actual book tower, which is in the Central Florida. Pretty cool. Okay, so it actually auto-exposed pretty nicely because the actual color of the water is actually pretty dark. And the sky is blue. The reflection is, reflected really nicely. I would say the auto correction from the SilverFast for the negatives are pretty efficient. So I'll start with that. And again, I'm just going to adjust the slider bar and see how it's going to give me the best possible output there is to start with. All right, pretty good. Give it kind of a quick white balance fix. The marble on the book tower is actually kind of reddish colored. So I think in terms of the white balance over there, it's pretty good. And I'm pretty happy with this pre-scan. So I am going to go ahead and scan. But one thing that I forgot to do before I hit that is I forgot to give the scan a new name, which this scan should be 09. too late. I'm going to start with 10, and I'm going to show you guys what is going to happen once it finishes with the scan process in this folder. It's going to give me a wacky name of 08 Princess 1. That's one quirk of, or Princess 2. That's one quirk that I really hate about SilverFast, is it doesn't auto advance with each of those scans that you do, okay? It's a pretty dumb system. So now we have 09. I could just do a quick fix in Photoshop, literally open it up, do some quick dust adjustment. Now, one thing I don't like is that the line over here, I mean, I could do a quick correction to remove that line and just remove all the dust over here really quickly. Okay. And it's going to do a pretty good job in Photoshop and way faster than if I'm going to do this in any other software to correct those dust. Now this one is a little tricky, so I'm going to come back here and edit later. I don't want to waste you guys' time, but for those kind of small dust correction, it's best done here in Photoshop. Okay. Alternatively, you could turn on that dust removal functionality and to get most of the dust removed. So that's a viable option, but that increases the actual scanning time twice as slow. Okay, so that's pretty good to my liking, and I'm gonna save this, start another scan. All right, so quit Photoshop, quit this, and the next scan, thankfully, I'm gonna advance it, and I already finished with renaming it to 10 because I know that's gonna be the 10th scan. And it's gonna do the pre-scan, and it's gonna auto expose, give me a preview of the auto expose. I think that's a little overexposed, so I'm going to definitely bring the value down just a little bit. Let me see. Or maybe I should play with the histogram and give it a little bit more detail over here. Okay, so balance it out. And that looks pretty nice. Rotate it to the correct location. Good. And this one is not as dusty, so again, I'm okay with the dust in this image. I'm going to go ahead and scan it again. Again, this is still a water reflection, so it shouldn't be too bright of a picture. Still going to tone down just a little more. And I'm going to hit scan. All right, it's going to do the scan in the back end. And the first thing I'm going to do for the next image, rename it and go back to my actual folder where it's saving it, wait for that image to arrive. Once it finishes processing, and just do a quick dust removal in the Photoshop. Okay, right here, open it up, it looks pretty nice. Just some small dusts, totally manageable. Okay. And yeah, so that's pretty much the workflow that you're going to expect if you are working with SilverFast. And the post-processing, my recommendation, get the most detail out of the scan from SilverFast and then go to your favorite editing software, finish editing over there, as opposed to trying to get the perfect exposure and the perfect edit out of SilverFast, because it's just not possible. Okay, so yeah, that's the overall process, at least for the SilverFast workflow. Now for the next one, let's do a pre-scan. For the last one, I am just going to enable the dust removal so you can get an idea how the dust removal is going to apply to the image. Okay. But I think I accidentally actually scanned the same image. I'm gonna advance to the second frame to the last, I think. Do a pre-scan. And that one looks pretty nice. I think this is going to be a great shot after it's finished processing. And again, the reflection that day was fantastic. So we get a really beautiful view. This is great. And this little hair will be a great opportunity for me to turn on the dust removal. Now, when you turn on the dust removal, the workflow actually changes a little bit, because the moment I hit this, the scanner or SilverFast switches to full view, and it's going to give me a very, very detailed full scan preview of what this shot looks like. You can see the quality immediately enhanced. So when you use the ISRD functionality, it gives you a full preview immediately. And then you can see it's initializing for ISRD, which gives you that infrared layer scan, which is the white color of the infrared. Any dust it's going to detect is going to be black, and it applies that to remove this dust. I'm pretty confident it's going to remove that dust after processing, so let's take a look. Beautiful, it is gone. Now, as I said, it's not a perfect algorithm to remove dust. It did remove it, however, it didn't take the grain of the film into consideration, and it just applied adjacent, pixel mashing to the algorithm. Does it work for dust removal? Absolutely. Okay. You can preview it in 1 by 1 or the overall. If you're using overall, you could see all the dust still, but if you use 1 to 1, and let's check this area. Interestingly, it didn't remove that dust. The scratch and dust is still there. So again, as I said, works 70 to 80% of the time, but not all the time. I am actually not going to enable this feature. So to remove the dust removal feature that was in your workflow, this is your entire workflow, you're just going to come over here and hit deactivate. Once you hit deactivate, it is out of the picture. I am going to do a pre-scan again. I'm going to snap that navigator back. I believe this is a pre-scan. Let's see. All right, yes. So this is a pre-scan. Again, just framing it, no dust removal. I'll do it later, and I'm going to make sure the naming is correct, and I'm going to hit scan. So this time, it's going to go through the workflow with the processing, no dust removal, and it's going to scan. It's going to name it 11, and it's going to show up in my folder as workflow queue being completed. So that is the entire process of SilverFast workflow. Besides the hardware part, and it's right here. I can open it up in Photoshop rather quickly. And again, as I said, Photoshop takes into consideration of the actual film grain of the actual color. So it's going to give me a much, much nicer dust removal fix. All right. Highly advise, do not do dust removal in the software, but instead just apply dust removal here in Photoshop with content awareness. It works fantastic. All right. So this thing, again, for a perfectionist, you'll do this. But for me, it is good enough. Then I'll move on to the next one. Just make sure there's no like white spots or dark spots, and it's good.
All right, so we are back for the final conclusion. And I'm still processing some of the films because I shot a total of 3 rolls of films that needs to be scanned. And this morning, I actually started a timer, okay? So the timer right now is at 1 hour and 13 minutes, and I'm almost done with 1 roll of film scanning. So as you can see, it is actually a quite time-consuming process, just even for 1 roll of 36 exposure film. Using this kind of workflow of the Plustek 8300i, SilverFast, and Photoshop post-processing. Now, for this roll, I didn't even do any dust removal yet in the Photoshop or do any kind of color correction in Photoshop yet. This is the time it's going to take. So if you are interested in finding out a workflow, this would be a important consideration, because nobody wants to spend more time than they want on a process that they may find enjoyable or not enjoyable, right? So for that matter, I would ask you to seriously consider some other options if you just absolutely cannot get over spending this amount of time sitting in front of the computer converting analog films to digital using a film scanner. Okay, there are definitely faster alternatives out there that would be digitizing using a digital camera and some proper film adapters, or like some proper film light box. I think there are quite a lot of how do I say it? Quite a lot of popular options out there, and so far from what I've researched and read, the Valori 35mm film digitizer version 2 that's going to come out, which I already pre-ordered, is going to be a interesting alternative to consider and also for me to personally test. So if you're interested in knowing about the time cost of the digital conversion, definitely subscribe to the channel. Once the V2 version of the Valori 35mm lightbox is out, I will do a review and then compare that to the film photography workflow. And so that's the end of the video. Hope you found it helpful, and if you did, like and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next video. Happy shooting and take care.